go-to-market side, so either marketing or revenue. And you are the unique one because you're the CISO in the room. But my question to you is, when did you realize you were actually a marketer posing as a CISO?
Yeah, we talked about this before.
Yes, because I feel like your mind just doesn't cohere to the stereotype of the operator.
Yeah. Probably when I was a director of information security, so actually before I took my first CISO role, which was G Treasury, I got my MBA from IU, and I realized that you're just selling to the rest of the IT and executive leadership team. It's actually why at every company, so JP Morgan, Fannie Mae, I actually had a marketing team in the cyber organization, which people thought, yeah. So I always had a creative. I had people. So it was important for us. So like at JP, I had $180 million a year budget, and I was like, what company has $180 million a year budget and doesn't have any aspect for marketing? And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. So
that's a good point.
I mean, it's a genius thing to do, because then you can use that marketing team to get into the business and educate.
That's exactly what we did.
To do.
Yeah. So because you have these super smart techie people create something, and then it would go to this customer who's like, what the shit is this? They had no clue. And
it wasn't in the purview of the like brand marketing team to go market your team's product to that customer.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Which was very, very successful.
Nice.
I feel like it's, certainly with big companies, it's pretty common. But I learned so much about cybersecurity marketing by being on one of those internal roles and helping that whole entire practitioner team articulate what our cybersecurity strategy is, and then shopping that around to all the other divisions, especially with like developers, and trying to articulate why we do things this way, what the strategy is, and why this connection point with the communication is so critical. So I think that's a unique perspective.
Yeah, I think it's funny if you ask any security leader, or maybe security practitioner, like who their customer is, they actually have no clue, right? They think it's the CISO, they think it's IT, they think it's an end user, and it's like, okay, so you've got all these departments, and you all have different customers, and that's why you're so disjointed. And then the CISO is the one who's sitting there trying to put this together in a board deck.
I mean, that's a euphemism for the world, right? It's the Big Short. They had a quote in there, and he said, "The guys that design the system don't even know how it works."
Yeah.
And it's like there's so many just things that people take for granted, but like that's a fundamental understanding of human psychology, right? And how to get a point across. So I think it's brilliant.
Or even like clarity too, right? Like you can, if you just joined a team that's doing that, you just go with the inertia, but you have to pause and be like, wait, do we know who we're talking to? Is on the security side, is the CISO, I mean, they sign the SOW maybe, but they're not the person with the hands on keys that are going to use our product, right? So it's like just pausing to have the time to ask those questions, which is, I feel like right now, most go-to-market teams are just like redlining it and pedal to the metal. And the default is like, look over your shoulder, who else is doing that? And then go do that faster.
Yeah.
So.
If I may pose a question for you, Chaz, I listened to your episode on Authenticated, and you told your story on how you worked on the petitioner side, on security, and now you're in marketing, which is awesome. And you're now marketing as well to a degree. You market the sales. How would you suggest other marketers who want to get close to the buyer, want to understand the world as best as possible? How would you suggest they approach that practically and as easily as possible?
Yeah, I had the benefit right out of the gate working side by side with a bunch of practitioners, so they just became my friends, and I realized those were my people, and I was going to check with them on stuff. But I think you're a great example of that, where you get involved in the community, you go to the B-sides, you join the Slack groups, you develop real relationships with people that are practitioners that are doing the thing, and you become friends with them rather than just this surface level, I'm going to go and interview a lot of people and see what their surface level, response is, going even deeper, really building that relationship and that bond, and then taking that, what and then, showing it the rest of the marketing team and getting them involved. But I think to be successful, you you can't just be one foot in the door. You have to be all in on the community and really embracing it and really getting to know people and understanding where they're coming from.
But I'm going to take it one step further. And this is a question for all of you, because we're all, to a certain degree, very entrenched in community. If a marketer or a salesperson is just feeling that imposter syndrome, they're feeling very scared to even take that step in. Because there are a lot of people who feel, I'm not cut out for this, or maybe I don't have a voice. Like, I'm not entitled to it. How do we kind of break that stigma?
It's a great question.
I like to focus on excitement. I mean, you mentioned getting involved in the community and getting the team involved. To me, it's much about exploration and getting people excited. It's about genuinely care about something. And oftentimes posing it as an exploration process really helps. Let's go ask. Let's understand whatever works for one vendor would not work for another. You can never assume anything. You kind of always have to ask, and you have to get people sort of excited for what they do in the exploration process. I feel like that helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That process right there is infectious.
Yeah.
Right. It gets everybody to kind of get drawn in. It's magnetic. It's the whole world has imposter syndrome. I feel like today. You flip on social media and everyone's a millionaire. They're living in fancy houses, driving incredible cars, and eating at 5-star restaurants all the time. I think honestly, it's about being able to purvey, outside of the suit.
Yeah.
I'm just a regular guy.
I told you to dress as your authenticated self, and this is what you brought to the table.
Well, like I said, I heard this was a video rendition of Where's Waldo. I wanted to share.
I think you talk a bit about this too, but I think it's so critical to develop that curiosity where you're right. Everyone has imposter syndrome, but how can you be curious enough to have that empathy to really want to go deep with someone and go even deeper and deeper without, and pitch slapping them at the end, but really spending time with them and having that level of curiosity about everything that we do in life and bringing that to the buyer relationship.
Yeah, Tia Hopkins said something interesting last year about imposter syndrome at SquadCon. She was like, syndrome is an ongoing chronic condition, which is very different than if you just feel uncomfortable in a moment and being able to distinguish between those two. I've always approached it as I have been working with computers since I was 7, but I am not a technical operator. And I try to come out with that very quickly. I am pretty transparent. My agenda is not to try and one up you or try to figure out some hole in your architecture and just jam the language from the pitch of my product into it. I'm just I've heard this. This is my background. Just have to be really open. I'm not here to compete with you on these terms.
Isn't that a little bit apologetic? I get that sometimes. I'm like that. I'm always equal left and right brain skills, not super technical, but also somewhat technical and somewhat of a mediator between super technical minds and other minds. And I almost feel like it's apologetic to be
maybe.
But it's interesting, right? So if you look at the CISOs today, the decision, the economic decision makers today, 56% of them are not technical. So out of the the global 2000, right? And then it's even I think it's only 4% that have any sort of a developer background. And then when you start to get to mobile and cloud, even the technologists, the ones, they grew up in data centers. They didn't grow up, in cloud ecosystems. So there's a lot of that imposter feeling as well. So I think part of it is, when you have a super smart technical seller or marketing team that comes out and they're like, oh, we're doing this and this and this, you actually get some of these executives who are like, that sounds a little scary. Let me just raise my hand and grab my architect or somebody else who gets it more right.
That's the thing. When you're coming into the security space as a fresh marketer from a different vertical or company, there's that stereotype that, CISO's technical.
Yeah, they're not.
When I started, I was like, they're technical and they have a level of business. And I was like, well, this message is not resonating whatsoever. And it was once I started talking to people, wow, their problems are my problem. Just communication, it's metrics, reporting to board. I didn't know that before I even opened my mouth and started that conversation.
I think early stage founders, though, are particularly notorious in that, and I think there's a problem for marketers who work with them. Smart people think everyone else is smart, right? And they're like, oh, I'll just explain this and then they'll totally get it and then they'll buy the thing. And it's no, that's not how that works, right? Like, just because you're super smart, it actually may come across as intimidating to this non-technical person, right? So like a lot of the executives who've come up in the last 2 years were promoted inside their organizations, and they weren't even in IT, right? They were there for 16 years, because the average tenure of CISO is about like 4.5 years of the Global 2000. So it's not this 18 months thing, right? Like a lot of them have just been at the company for a long time, right? So it's business acumen. So showing up and marketing super techie stuff kind of freaks them out.
I will also say though, I see a lot of cybersecurity marketers, me having been one before, and worked with a lot of them, that come from a bigger company. They have huge budget. Won't call any names, but they'll buy these, buyer personas from one of the big analyst firms that gets all packaged up with, this is what a CISO is, this is what a security engineer is. And you're so far removed, you're like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon removed from the actual buyer.
And that doesn't work.
So the first thing, if people, and I brought in people that are newer to cybersecurity, especially on the demand gen side, if they're feeling nervous about what you're saying with an imposter syndrome, not to call you out, Danny, but I immediately send them, I have like a copy and paste Google Doc of all the links, of all the things they need to be listening, of what Danny has said, a lot of the podcast interviews you've done, where they're a fly on the wall as well in the room when you're having an authentic conversation. So they get used to, how we're talking to each other. It's real people you're dealing with, and they're more inspired to go and take that next step. Maybe it's a little less scary.
It's working.
Yeah. But one question about the curiosity, is time horizon. I think maybe a lot of executive leadership teams don't have the patience for the time it takes to interrogate the question or the customers or the design partners. And so like, how are you all dealing with that in terms of either buying enough time to do the stuff? Because it's like an investment of time will pay off, but you have to be able to make that convincing argument now. Just curious about what you're doing there.
Sometimes we learn in the hard way, to be honest. It's not just about time, it's also about patience, especially with like younger stage startups. We want to get everywhere.
Yes, 20 logos by
As fast as
fourth quarter.
possible.
You're
but-
being driven to that point, right?
Yeah, you're being driven. You want to. I mean, we all share the same purpose, right? But I think it's very quickly on where you discover you have to take the time to ask the questions. Otherwise, you're just like shooting. Like, there's no point to what you're doing. Yeah, I think reality presents it either way.
I will say though, cybersecurity marketing or sales, cybersecurity go-to-market in general, it is one of the most difficult industries to be successful at from a go-to-market perspective. If we're talking Olympic terms here, the level of difficulty in the routine is much higher than the majority of other industries. So it is kind of a bit of a commitment to say you've got to understand cybersecurity well enough and spend time with your buyers, but you also have to be able to innovate on the marketing side, on the sales side. So it's a crunch. It's a high level of difficulty and a lot of work.
Yeah,
Do it in a fast enough time frame.
I think there's very few things that come out that you see from marketing teams that actually are like, you're like, whoa, that's really cool. Like that grabs attention, right? Like if you think back to one of the coolest things I ever saw, was, if you remember CrowdStrike, when they first came out with their stickers, right? And so they had these stickers and they were like APT threat actor groups. I know a lot of SOCs that collected the stickers.
The stickers?
The stickers. And they would invite CrowdStrike in to do demos and ask them to bring, hey, I don't have whatever, Fuzzy Panda number 42 or whatever it was, right? And it was this really interesting, like...
It was like Pokemon.
It was. And it was fascinating. I'm like, so you guys are meeting with CrowdStrike again? Like, oh, yeah. We got to check this thing out. And I'm like, you guys just want the fucking stickers, right? Like,
Do you think it would have worked today?
I don't know, right? But like, there's...
See, that's as a marketer.
Yeah,
I
that's
hear
tricky.
that. I have to say, my gut feeling tells me no. Like the stickers. I'm just talking about the stickers.
It's all the same, most of the stuff that you see out there today. Now it just becomes like, who's got more money to put on the F1 car?
But that's the thing. You have to step up your game like all the time. It just the rush, the level of excitement to the threshold just goes like that.
So that's like 3 pressure points, right? So Chaz, to your point, it's pressure from the go-to-market side, whether it's like the VC or the founder, like the growth goals. It's the keeping up with different parts of the industry, and that you've brought up like just the proliferation of the market. So like constantly standing out in something that just feels like, I mean, to be real, we don't have as many startups as say fintech or martech, and yet it still feels overwhelming. Like you're fighting shadows over like several niche territories in the ecosystem. I don't know what that's like.
Yeah, the challenge is this. The concept of time comes down to it's an artificial boundary. And I don't mean that in this kind of, philosophical sense. The success is going to happen for a company or it's not. And that success is going to come from solving real problems and creating a value equation that solves real problems to real use cases. Does it in a time boundary that the customer can do themselves. And you can demonstrably show that very, very quickly and very simply. And the reality is we try to overcomplicate our language. We try to create analogies and euphemisms for everything instead of just come to the core of what we want to say. And, when we start talking about time, there's a lot of wasted motion in just how we converse.
Yeah.
The best thing, God gave you two ears and one mouth. Like the whole analogy rings true here. Do more listening than you do speaking, because then you'll know what to say. And the best sellers that I've ever met in my life are great educators. And great educators really take the time to listen. And when they do, they view time as a tool. And I think the challenge is you can't just package that up and give it to everybody you want to. But you can, because not everybody has those inherent skills that are learned over a lifetime, right? So when you start taking a look at time in general, it comes down to what is the problem you're trying to solve. And too many people try to go with a boilerplate equation. This is the way to do it. This is how I did it in my last company. This will work. We need buyer personas. We need this much pipeline. The reality is you might not need any of it. Every problem is a math problem. And how do you solve a complex math problem?
Such a CRO.
So
We're going to talk about numbers here.
I argue though, right? Like I think that, we've seen, for one, in our industry, there's a lot of companies that are features. And, their goal is not to build a platform that solves a thing. It's to get acquired by somebody. And literally it's the goal. It's like, hey, we're building this thing. Our goal is to get acquired by Microsoft in 18 months. And so we're just doing this one.
So take that, and I'm going to let you finish. Now what we've done is we've trained the buyer market to essentially be scared of any startup because one, they're going to go out of business, or two, they're going to get gobbled up 95% of the time. Very few ever go public. And at the end of the day, very few ever make it to a growth stage company.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, now we have this noise and the buyer's saying, we're just going to wait and see.
Yeah, they can afford to like drag it out because they're just
Buyers, I think, generally, most of the time, they buy on the transference of trust, right? They're like, oh, which is why you have sales teams who are like, hey, who have you sold to in the past? Because you have those relationships. Sarah trusts you. You're not going to go to some shitty company. So Sarah's going to think, hey, let's get the transference of trust. I'm going to buy this store. At least check it out, right? And if your tech is good enough, right, it doesn't need to solve everything, but if it's good enough, then the buyer's like, okay, cool. This solves this problem. I'll buy that, right? It's really, really rare to see a company who just has they solve something really, really great, but they're successful without having the relationships either through VCs, CISOs, the buyer components, right? We've seen a bunch of those companies die. Yeah, right. And then you've seen some companies that you're like, does that even work? Like, how the hell did they get to a Series C and nobody knows if it actually does anything, right?
yeah, I know several of them.
Well, then let me ask a question. So, we talked about there being such a proliferation of startups and vendors in the sales tech or MarTech space. Do you think we have way too many cybersecurity startups? Do you think that's a problem?
So I don't.
Why were you looking at me?
I want to hear what the CRO says.
I personally don't think it's a problem. I mean, I think competition breeds innovation, and there'll be winners and losers in that. That's just the way that it is. And some days you'll be on the winning and losing side. That's just the way that it is. I don't really take it personal. You make the best choices with what you have in front of you. But the market itself, if we didn't have that amount of competition, the reality is the world isn't slowing down. And if we don't come out with, whether it's a feature product, whether it's a great idea that just needs funding and time, regardless of what the product is, if we don't spark those ideas now, the challenge is you start losing on the bell curve. And the challenge with cybersecurity is it's always been a reactive sport. And we've been losing it for a long period of time, despite the investment, despite all these startups, despite the proliferation and all the money being spent at these shows. So I think it's a good thing. I think what we've done though is the community, back to this, like this matters. I think there's, over the last decade or so, we fractured the community quite a bit. And I think that community is very untrusting of go-to-market people, both marketers and salespeople, because they don't take the time to understand. They don't take the time to educate. They don't really want to know. They just want to hit their numbers, make a paycheck, and go home and be happy.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that I understand it. I get it. But the reality is, if you want to be good at this, you can't take that approach to it. But I don't think having less startups will solve it. I do think there'll be a bit of a correction, right? But I think at the end of the day, the innovative community that's been built in the cybersecurity startup realm, I think it needs to go faster.
Yeah, I mean, we're in an arms race. I think it's not about proliferation of cybersecurity startups. I think that's healthy to push this innovation and force the big guys, the top 5 cybersecurity, one-stop shops, to do that type of innovation, whether through acquisition or through pressure on a roadmap. At the end of the day, the buyer and the cybersecurity community in general is going to benefit from that. And we are in an arms race. So with the innovation and the pace of innovation is so incredibly fast compared to a lot of the other industries.
I use this, I coached 46 CISOs across Global 2000. So one of the things I talk about with is Price's Law, right? Price's Law, the output of something is provided by the square root of the number of things doing it. So you got 4 sellers, half your sales is actually done by 2 people. If you've got 25 sellers, half your sales is done by 5 people, right? Price's Law is consistent, just pretty much across every business domain. I apply it to cyber products. So if you have 100 products, 50% of your utils of security are coming from 10 products, right? And that means the other 50% are coming from 90. And it's this really wonky thing where at the tail end, you're suddenly spending an outsized amount for half a util of security, right? And it becomes very, very interesting of why you're going to see more and more platforms be like, how do I become one of the 10, right? And those 10 are like, Yoda security leader, be like, what products you're relying on? They're like, it's Microsoft, it's this, it's that, it's there. They have the 10 in their head,
Yeah.
right? And it's those random, like, oh yeah, I forgot we have that. Like, oh yeah, I think we did something with that, right? So I don't think there's too many vendors. I do think the vendors are not providing enough utils of security relative to their cost, right? Because it's like you suddenly start getting to this really interesting cost dynamic of like, we'll give you half a percentage for 300 grand,
Right.
and I'm like, I got 7% for 300 grand.
Right.
So that's kind of how I think about it. I think there's plenty of space, but they need to increase the value.
So you all have been involved in several startup, early stage investing, whatever. So I want to turn attention away from the market to the founder. So just sort of like, what do you look for? Are you looking for something in the founder that's unique or something in the idea? Like, what's the thing that's like sticking out to you the most? Because you've done it all several times, so you probably have a rubric that you're using.
Yeah. No. I've seen many founders at different stages. Many Israeli founders where there's a type. It's definitely the idea, but also the people. And they have to believe in marketing.
And then marketing is not sales.
And marketing is not sales. And they have to be genuine, caring people. Not, Mr. or Mrs. like know-it-all. Just be open to having a discussion, learning, and just be curious, I guess. Definitely ID and definitely people.
What are some of the behaviors you're looking for to suss out that curiosity?
That's a great question too. So I can just give an example.
Yeah.
The current CEO that I work with, he would like, just as we started, like even before we even officially started, discussing me working there, he would write down ideas that he heard from me that like you could tell it was the first time he heard. You could tell he went away home with it and like processed it.
No,
It's
interesting.
it's a genuinely interesting not kind, but just a beneficial thing to do. And, it stayed with me. So
And that's nice.
that's a good example.
Well, I think as a founder and CEO, I mean, it's critical because you're the key person that's attracting the top talent to your startup. And it's a risky endeavor, to join a startup. So there's got to be that magnetism. So for me, it's humble kindness, but also a massive drive for curiosity. And that is so critical because you may have to pivot 3 or 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, guaranteed.
Yeah,
You're gonna have to.
Yes, exactly. But also they know how to work with practitioners if they themselves are not a practitioner. So I'll give you an example. The company that I'm at, going into product and features, it was so incredibly important for me to pick a startup that had a product that was going to be championed by practitioners. I wanted this cybersecurity community and the practitioners to really feel like this is a really cool innovation. I want to shout about this. I want to spread viral word of mouth about this. I want to talk about it. And speaking of JP Morgan Chase, it's because the person that built it with the team ran the SOC or parts of the SOC at JP Morgan Chase a while back. So it's the person that's building it, they're all practitioners. So they're building it for themselves. So I think when you think of the idea, it's more than the idea. It's like, do they have an overwhelming understanding of the person that they're selling to, that they're building this product for?
Yeah.
And does a CEO or founder, if they are not that person, do they massively respect that and they are able to attract that type of talent?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say the one for if I'm investing, I invest in the person more than the idea. I think that's more important for me. There's a whole host of reasons. The one thing you said actually just kind of like jumped out. I was like, was that people think, especially if they're working in enterprise, that startups are risky. And I actually think that is a dangerous piece because I don't think they're risky relative to an enterprise. Because when you're at a startup, you actually don't have any less job security than you do if you work at a bank, right? You're seeing so many layoffs across tech sector, large organizations, people being cut. And I think when I talk with other practitioners, like, I wouldn't go to a startup because it's risky. I'm like, it's not risky. Like it's different. So I 100% agree it's different. But I think that idea actually keeps practitioners from going to startups and being able to lend that value.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it depends on what level you're at, right? So attracting, VP level talent and above, depending on where they were at, they're going to have to take a massive pay cut on a lot of cases to do that. Now, the payoff may be massively more worth it if an acquisition or an IPO happens, but they're having to take that financial risk to give that up for, 3 to 5 years or however long. So I think that's kind of where the risk comes for me. But not from you're right, massive layoffs are happening all the time.
Like an engineer, be like,
yeah, totally.
You're an engineer here. Like,
Totally. And you grow so much more as a person. I mean, I cannot recommend it enough. I don't ever want to go back to the big company world unless we get acquired and I need to go there for a little while. And
sorry.
You speak about being humble and you speak about this sort of uncertainty and how it's not so different. I think it has to do with being comfortable with being uncomfortable and just not always knowing and being able to hear hard truths. And really, like, one of the things I like about the founders I work with at the moment, they're willing to hear hard truths. They don't always think they got it all together.
They don't feel like personally insulted by it.
Not at all. Like, they would ask for it sometimes, which is quite unusual. Like, tell me what I'm doing wrong. I want to hear it, which is really outstanding.
Right.
So just being comfortable with being uncomfortable, I guess.
So it's a big part of it is like back to like mental strength and stability, being a genuine person and being able to show that, hey, I'm not Superman. That's why I hired you guys, right? Help me see through your lens and what do we have to be different. But if I'm going to pick one trait, because everything that you guys have said is perfect, but you'll never find a unicorn on human. And if I have to find one trait, it is obsessive over customer success.
Yeah.
Because if they are obsessed on driving a quality outcome for a customer, your job's going to be real easy.
Yeah.
Really
I
easy.
mean, we're like feature development, road mapping, like prioritization on that roadmap.
Right. And that's where it gets to be like those founders that do that, as opposed to, I mean, I'm going to call it square. There's a lot of founders out there that they're selling snake oil, right? They have a great concept. In their mind, they just don't know how to bring it to life. So they're going to fake it until they can try to get it some outcome. And that's where the market has become fractured, because the market's very distrusting, because then that culture creates these boiler room cultures that at the end of the day, everybody's used to seeing 4,000 emails in their inbox, giving them a new growler or mug or movie posters signed by Michael J. Fox, whatever it is, in order to get a meeting. And the reality is that's not what drives interaction and engagement. But a founder that's focused on customer success, like Steve Jobs is probably one of the best examples of this, right? And of course I can use him, looking back in retrospect, but he was obsessed on creating an experience.
Experience. Like, it had to be delight. It had to be like, it wasn't like, oh, it's useful and it's affordable. It was like meh to him. It was like, was it like, wow,
how do I feel when I interact with this? And that is the thing. Like when you get to that point and you find a founder that gets to that, man, that is heaven on earth.
Nice.
So
can we talk about failure? All right. Anyone want to catalog that something that just like was a total flop? Like, I got this. It was gonna go off, and then it was just.
I mean, it's the reason where I'm city choir city year, right? Because I'm the CISO.
Do elaborate.
Yeah, can you tell what was the word you? What was the
Zero trust.
Yeah, you said it. Yeah, it was a trigger word.
We were talking about 0 day. Just like had no. It had a 0, and I knew nothing about security at the time. I was like, let's just save fancy. We're gonna think it sounds good on a call.
Just went through the jargon Rolodex and chose that one.
We were going to a website feedback session with a CISO customer of ours, and it was embarrassing. I basically spewed zero trust out, and this CISO's I would take this person back to the field. Basically, shooter, something like that, or taser that, or something like that. The word taser, if I use that word, you probably know what I'm talking about.
Yes, we do.
And I was like, whoa, okay, what just happened? I then literally like went back in my seat. Like, what did I do? What did I say? Why? And so I followed afterward and asked him what went down. Like, I could continue doing what I do.
Yeah,
or
you're in defensive crouch, or
I could kind of go back into my little marketing cave, or I could take a step and talk to this person. And I say, okay, what did I do wrong? Why? What did it mean? How did it make you feel? What should I do differently next time? And now we're great friends. He's a podcast host, a co-host of mine. He's been on my panels. It's why I do what I do now.
Yeah.
It's why I'm so curious and do customer interviews with practitioners in the community and share that with the rest of the world, because I don't want others to feel what I feel. Well, I do want them to feel what I feel because it gets you going, we get some fire under your ass. But that was a big flaw. But failure that took me forward.
Yeah, I think mine was just copying the booth strategy.
Yeah.
We had no brain recognition. There was no reason to spend that much money. Oh my God, how much money was spent at RSA. And I've said, I think the lead scan file was 396 names after you took out, the VARs and the consultants. And then the students, I got it to 86, but it was like, oh, maybe 2 calls. I was like, okay, we cannot do that because that strategy doesn't work. And then the next year we went offsite and we tried to create experiences of a lounge or something unique, not even just like executive suite. Like, we brought in Alyssa Knight and she did a talk, and it was more like create a place where people felt welcome, not just a party, but like give CISOs an excuse to network and meet others and then see something cool that they'd never seen before. And I mean, in terms of metrics, I think it was like 10x the number of meetings for like a 5x reduction in cost. You know, the suite wasn't nearly as much as a booth and the T&E to bring everyone over. And that was the light bulb moment. It was like, why am I listening to other people's ideas? I had these other ideas and like, I should have just fought for them. That's what I should have
I
done.
think to your point, once the market really catches on, like, I don't know how much I want to say here because I don't want the juice to get loose, but once you start realizing that a booth is nothing more than a billboard, there's other ways to have a billboard. I have this morbid sense of time. So like right now, I feel like it's running away from me. And, you know, when you take a look at it, like moments count. And, you know, it might seem contrite to some, but you'll never know what someone's gone through unless you've lived their life. And to be able to judge somebody until you understand who they are, it's not applicable. So for me, the whole meaning of this is the people you surround yourself with, the experiences that those people can give to you. And if you can create a memory that's going to be lasting, that someone will see you in 5 years and say, hey, you remember that?
Yeah.
And Alyssa came and talked to us.
Yeah.
And it's like you made an impression on that person for life.
Yeah.
And you did it without having to spend the most money, without having to think up the most original idea. It was
Didn't have to pay for F1 licensing rights.
and you get to kind of get everybody together and be humans. And that's part of what we're doing because too many people have masks on every day. They just can't be themselves, or they don't feel like they can be themselves.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if I can't be myself in my job, I'll find another job. That's just the way it is, you know. And it's the same thing with the community. If I don't like my community, I can change it, right? But too many people want to give up. I tell people, don't be the victim on it.
I think that was a good panel, though. If I remember that.
That's right, because you were on it.
That's right. But I think the other piece, though, is there's when you think about Black Hat or RSA, there's what I call RSA 1, which is the booths, and then there's RSA 2, right?
The
Black Hat
outer
1,
ring.
there's Black Hat 2, and just even this year, there's 1,900 cybersecurity conferences and events, right? And if you even look at just the who's like where all these vendors are doing dinners in cities, like we'll call out that, hey, don't do it in New York.
Yeah.
Do it in Nashville.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? There are these, I think there's like 20 cities that we fly that are like
Underserved.
absolutely. It's like the difference between Charlotte and Raleigh is insane.
Yeah.
Right? Because everyone in Raleigh drives over to Charlotte, and there's a huge group of security leaders like, hey, can we just get some vendors to do some stuff in Raleigh instead? So I don't have to drive the 90 minutes or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Well, in both ways, right? Because you're going
It
to
is.
lose. And it's like a Thursday night and they got to like make their kids
That's
soccer game or whatever.
Exactly.
You're asking a
That's
lot.
why you're seeing so much like the like local ISSA chapters. The proliferation and just the attendance of those has been massive, particularly over the last couple of years. Because you're seeing large enterprises cut down, first cut out T&E. And so being like, oh wow, that ISSA chapter is like I always tell them, North Texas ISA.
Yeah, man.
$2,000.
If you're doing anything in Tola, like that's like one of the big
$2,000
ISOs.
is a platinum keynote sponsor, right? Or you can go spend $90,000 on a booth.
Yeah.
Right. And you're gonna get third CISOs Lubbock versus 86 years.
So that's interesting from the go-to-market strategy about like how do you, I mean, all that territory, all that map, how are you making choices about, because that kind of investment is not like, it's RSA, they come once a year, the tentpole conferences. That means you have to kind of like boots on the ground, either it's reps or it's people are like they got to put in the work like on this local chapter.
Also, we can completely diss awareness. I mean, I know it's a word, it's an abused phrase, it's an abused term, but it counts. It counts. Names count, recognition counts, awareness counts. Like it counts. People remember.
I had a question for Belmir, and this is kind of pulling from conversations I've had with practitioners about, you know, these huge events, the huge investment that's required at companies. And sometimes these startups don't have that money, even for like Startup Central or Innovation Valley or whatever the hell they call it. They mention it, they say like, well, if you're not at this event, Expo kind of don't exist. That's like hard to hear as a good work professional. Like how do you handle that kind of feeling?
I actually totally disagree that if you're not there, you don't exist. I always say, so for me with a current company I work with, sweet. We do these events, but I wouldn't necessarily do it with any other company. There's so many ways to tackle these events, through relationships, through side events, through guerrilla marketing, through just, be creative, be curious. I really think I'm a firm believer in the fact that what works for one company doesn't work for another. You have to ask the questions again and again and again, wherever you're at. There's so many ways to go about it. You don't have to do it. If I were at any other company, I wouldn't spend the
Do
money.
you face any pressure from the executive team? Like, because often in these startups, they're serial execs, right? They come
Yeah.
from one and they're like, well, we have to be at ours.
Yeah.
Like the expectation and like, what is that education and managing up? You're like,
Yeah.
well, do we need to be there?
I am so lucky to have like 100%, 200% back. I met what I said earlier. Like my co-founders, they believe in marketing, they believe in me, and they ask the right questions, or they let me ask the right questions. That's one of the reasons I went along with them. There is some pressure, especially I would say, like if you think investors,
Yeah.
if you think current customers, like current pipelines, you want that recognition, you want that booth number. Oh, come visit. Like I don't mean to put you in the corner. You don't have to meet me at this like shady place or at a suite or at a bar. You can just come by. It's not as, stressful maybe. But no, I think again, I'm very fortunate to work with people who just go along with me. And so,
Nice.
yeah.
I mean, there is no boilerplate equation. Kind
Yeah.
of goes back to like you got to figure it out from your company.
Yeah.
I mean, to circle back to something on failure real quick.
Yeah.
My whole life has been a series of, right? So the way that I look at it is it's more like iterative failure. Like, hey, what's the outcome of the failure?
Mm.
Is the outcome that you learn nothing and that you're just defeated, or is the outcome that you understand essentially how to take a different path moving forward? I wish there was like one gaping failure I could give you, but my whole life is a series. Right. So it's the only thing that's gotten me to understand and probably develop my own philosophies around, like I encourage people to dare to fail and come back every week and tell me, what did you fail at? And if you didn't fail at anything,
Are you really learning?
are you
Yeah.
really trying?
Right. There's failure, and then there's the experience from the failure.
Yeah.
And then there's the decision to take the
To act upon it.
But yeah, I mean, you can continue doing the same thing, and it's easy to stay in the same path, but it's so much more rewarding to
Yeah.
make changes and really assess yourself and assess the situation, and decide and make that concrete decision. Now it's time to do something to me. It's not that's not easy to do.
Also not obvious. Most people don't do
No.
it.
Yes.
I'll give you a good example of when we were talking about failures before. So thinking about this, I feel like my biggest aha moment and how I was failing earlier in my career, in my product marketing career, and going back to your comment about authenticity, 10, 15 years ago, I was still wearing heels and a dress to work, and I was going into the office every day, and it just felt like this very corporate environment. And when I owned messaging, so much of my messaging, I wouldn't stand up for and say, no, this is buzzword bingo. It's industry's leading, unified, whatever, complete, all of the stuff. All the
Single
buzzword
pane.
bingo. And then I would start with really what I felt like was really good, more authentic messaging that wasn't corporate. But then it just felt like, well, now I have to slap a pane of corporate on it because the CEO is pushing this way or this SVP is pushing this way. So I didn't really have enough of a backbone to push back.
Yeah.
And I feel like looking back at my work back then, so much of it is contributing to the major problems we're having today where everyone sounds the same. And then once I realized that, it's not always the marketer's fault. A lot of times they just get overtaken by the CEO. This is how we're going to message it. So, but it is the marketer's job to stand up and have an opinion about how do we actually position this? How do we articulate what the value is? It's going to save everybody's time. Get straight to the point. But to do that, you really have to know and understand your ICP. So you got to have a level of courage and a level of communication to articulate that to everyone. And if you're a CEO or, you're SVP or whatnot is pushing back for you to do industry leading buzzword bingo, have an opinion, push back. You represent the voice of the customer and have a backbone for it.
Bring the proof, provide the proof. Like go ask and bring the proof.
I'm here for you in your redemption era.
One thing though, I think that you can't miss is that these work here at Black Hat. Like Black Hat is actually becoming, in my view, complicit in exacerbating the problem. RSA is as well, right? If you try to book, if you sponsor RHISAC, for example, right, and I'll call it out, you actually, they in the contract, they prohibit you from doing a dinner off-site, right, during the days of RHISAC, right? Now, as of this year, RSA 2 is now being pulled more into the fold, right? Want to do anything here in Mandalay or in the vicinity, it's got to go through here, right? So these organizations which initially existed or were founded to be, oh, we're going to create opportunities to share ideas and startups, like they're in like full corporate business mode of like
legal extortion.
it's like, hey, you want to play on this building? Now we're bigger, right? Now you got to do this. And,
How valuable and beneficial is that for our community space, really? Like in terms of exactly. And we lost our mission.
yeah, it's absolutely fair.
It's a big commercial, is what I was.
Okay, so in our closing time here, this sort of is a great segue in this is your chance. This doesn't have to be go to market, but like, what do you see from your experience, trends next 5 years? Where is the arc sort of?
Go to market wise,
I
marketing.
guess so, sure. Anything from you sit, especially in startup land, you sit in a particular vantage point, both from marketing, but you work so closely with founders and CEOs, you're kind of seeing that. You're kind of seeing venture. There's a lot. I think go-to-market encompasses so much that you probably see more.
I think you'll see over the next 5 years, a lot of the hocus pocus money that's been thrown around in the VC community is going to go away because they've realized there's been a lot of core bets, not bad bets, but core bets. Like they tried to take something to market too quick.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't give it its just due. I think there'll be a little bit of a correction there. In terms of go to market, fundamentals are the fundamentals. It's just a matter of how you put them together. They're never going to change. Like I always say, there are no new answers. There are just new problems, right? Like we've already done this before. I really don't believe that there's going to be something that's going to be so unique and original that any of us are going to create that's going to be different. It's just going to be a repurposing of things. We're in like the BASF time of the cybersecurity. So I think there's going to be a market correction. I think VCs are going to get a little wiser. I think because of that, the market will become a little more sane, hopefully. Because right now there's not a tremendous amount of sanity.
From a CR standpoint, what does that look like? Does that look like more reasonable revenue targets and less like 5x everything by next year?
Maybe. I think it really depends on the company and the trajectory. I don't think, rolling over any multiple is unreasonable as long as there's data to justify it.
Right.
So whether it's a 10x or 100x or whatever it is, if there's data to justify, agree. But if it's an arbitrary goal, like those are going to go away.
Oh, okay.
So I think a lot of things will be much more data driven, or they'll be more rationale driven versus I'm going to invest on excitement alone.
Right.
And that excitement is going to drive me to crank up a valuation on a company. And that valuation is going to crank up the pressure on all the internal employees. And that internal pressure is going to create internal pressure back into the market. And it creates this never ending cycle that you see right now. And it's also to the point where it's like, it feels unhealthy.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to go through a period of mindfulness.
There you go.
I'll dive in here
Yeah,
also.
let's do that.
I think I have a slightly different point of view, which is I think two big things are fundamentally changing a lot of go-to-market, whether you're at a startup, whether you're at a big company. One is you can no longer just be successful taking and whining, dining a CISO and going out to golf tournaments with that and selling directly to the CISO and having the CISO then buy the product and then give it to their team. I think that motion has been what a lot of the big players have leaned on for so long. And now, and you'll see CISOs post about this all the time on LinkedIn, or you talk to them and all of our CISO friends. They want their, their team, their right hand, their left hand person to come to them and say, this is the tech stack that we want. This is the tech stack that's going to make the most sense. This is what's going to fit with the existing environment that we already have. So that rise in security practitioners having a seat at the table and buying decisions is so critical, and it changes the way that we go to market because
100.
they want to learn as much as possible before ever hopping on a call with sales.
Especially if 40% of the CISOs are for business acumen, like business leader, and 56. There you go. Yeah.
They very much depend on their team. They want, ungated product tours.
We used to have a conversation after this.
Yeah, they want ungated product tours. They want you to teach them something new and bring value to the table before they're going to answer a phone call or before they're going to take a first meeting with you. So that's fundamental thing number one, which also changes the skill set of go-to-market teams. They need to be a lot more technical. Like, we just have to realize that, sure, we need the business side of it. We need to be able to articulate that. But to be able to speak to the practitioners, we need to, double down on more of our technical knowledge and also help them translate that to the CISO. I'm seeing it all the time, like translating the value of detection engineering to a CISO. That's a hard concept to be able to put a value on. And I think the second thing
Does that
is
change how you hire also, like the traits you're looking for?
definitely changes certainly how I hire for product marketing roles. Absolutely. I think the same for sales engineering, for AE type of roles as well, and go to market. But then the second thing compiled with that is just the changing demographics of who is now rising to the occasion for these buying decisions. With Gen Z and millennials, that's a totally different buying decision and process and ways that they want to be reached out to. And so I think we're kind of behind the curve on that. So there's a lot of people that are diving in and they're taking inspiration from other industries or whatnot to go in this direction. But I think it's absolutely critical, and that's going to fundamentally change the way that we think about go-to-market over the next 5-10 years.
I want to echo that. I think community is going to be a big part of that, especially
For sure.
yeah, we're talking about community here as well. But like, if we look at cloud, for instance, you have so many champion level. You have AppSec, DevSecOps, SOC, IR. You have identity people. Like, you have so many champions relating to that space. You're gonna have to, especially with Gen Z and like newer generations, you're gonna have to create some sort of a hook, some sort of a community or bond. I think to really attract. I don't know if attention is the right word, but to really attract traction.
Yeah.
To make trust, but also I feel like just something they can relate. I don't know if trust is the word. I really see this, like we used to see this with within the SOC space. So around SIEM tools and like all these different management tools. I think we're really going to need to create communities around certain fields of practice. And I also want to address what you said. I think we're growing in cynicism for cybersecurity. It has to do with a proliferation. Marketing is going to have to be not even just more straightforward, but just more simple. I genuinely think that. We're no longer using we're all using these abused terms, but we're going to have to really nail it down and be as simple and as trustworthy as we can.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are right in the middle. You're in the middle of my Venn diagram, right?
Yeah. So
You're talking to go-to-marketers about how they reach this.
So I do think hyper-focused ABM is going to be where everything's going to have to go. When I'm biased on that, but I do think the backfires is a main factor. I think as we look at who the tenure of CISO decision makers, at least across the global 2000, a number of them in the next 5 years are going to be stepping out of role, and they're going to end up as vendors, and you're going to have a transference of trust.
Yeah.
And the transference of trust is going to be they're going to go sell to their friends. So I think you're going to see a hyper-focused ABM. I think you're going to see a hyper-focus in advocacy and actually pushing it aside. Out of they're going to be selling to the people that they coached and mentored throughout. So being able to map and be like, okay, so-and-so was a CISO there. Who used to work for so-and-so? Where's that going to go? And I think you're going to see a super easy path of, that's what Zscaler did. It's what Netscope did. It's what Opta did. anticipate cyber and
So probably a growth in like the CISO in residence or like commercial CISO roles.
but it's going to be what's going to be bad for the vendors is they pick CISOs who actually don't have networks,
Yeah.
right?
Influencers. You're talking about
Yeah,
influencers.
and it's the that influencer component.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a big piece. I don't see in the next 5 years CISOs actually giving up the ultimate decision lead. Like so many times I talk to people like, oh yeah, my team has to make the decision. And then when the team lands on the wrong answer, it's like, oh, but you see, you guys didn't think about this, so we're going to go here. Right. And it happens all the time. And so the reason why is because it's the trust, it's the relationship, it's the, I know they're not the best, but like, I really like so-and-so, and I think they're going to do this. I think that's what we're going to see. So
Interesting.
See, and then the hype folks that you have.
Playing on advocacy, I think yes, definitely advocacy. I think there's been more focus on customer marketing.
Yeah, it's a growing role. It's like a really high growth
retention,
role.
which is it's so much cheaper to retain your customers than just getting it.
Well, to your point about like, do you chase the logos or do
Oh
you
my
go
gosh.
really deep and broad in the existing accounts? For sure.
I've worked for startups where it's
But we forgot about retention.
Yeah, when you
You know,
churn, it
like-
costs so much more to go after new logos to replace the old ones.
We can be closer to the GTM teams going closer to customer, working with the practitioners, understanding different mindsets, different roles, responsibilities.
Also, I think, the cost of churn is more expensive now because of the way CISOs communicate, right? Or practitioners. They're in WhatsApp groups, they're in Slacks. And so when your name is mud, like, oh, it like carries and it sticks to you much stronger than it used to, because it used to be like in local region, somebody might whisper about you, but now it can just go like that.
My fear though, sorry, just
yeah.
I know we're more right. My fear though is that with advocacy in the community, then there's gonna be a proliferation of community in the next 2-3 years, and we're not gonna know what real community is.
Oh, like, yeah.
It's going to start becoming way too saturated. So we already see saturated communities now.
Yeah.
Like what really is true community experience.
Nice. All right, friends. This was awesome. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the attention. Good.
Sorry.